All right. So the unique thing about DevOps as a Service Nigeria, which is daas.ng, is that we are not just teaching what DevOps is really, but showing the various steps, the various practical steps of how it works from the foundational level to a level of understanding, for everybody to be able to have a full grasp into what DevOps is. Now, another attribute about daas.ng platform, for those that are just joining us for the very first time, is that it's free, and all our mentees are on the same platform together with our faculty speakers who are also our mentors, all on our Discord channel. And our goal is that at the end of this boot camp, right, everybody will be grounded with the full understanding of DevOps, the practices, the culture, skills needed to transform the modern IT workplace. So that being said, we would be having an interesting conversation about cloud and DevOps. And this is something I'm very, very passionate about. I love talking about cloud. I love, preaching the DevOps word, to everybody around me. And joining me this afternoon is Kenny Noah. Kenny is a technical account manager, at Google Cloud in London. And we've known each other now, I think, for about 4 years. So he's a passionate professional, with over 15 years of experience in the IT field, and he has worked with great organizations like VMware and HP. Believe me, everybody, like, we're actually very, very fortunate to have him speak on this interesting topic, DevOps and cloud management, the adoption procedure, and the overall journey. So DevOps is the next big thing in the IT space today. We're all aware of that, right? Everybody is talking about it. Organizations are also looking for practitioners in this space who have a thorough and a full understanding of the entire concept. So you go out there, you'll be hearing different kind of questions. Is DevOps a tool? Is it a title? Is it just one of those buzzwords, being thrown frequently? All of this will be addressed today. So everybody, kindly join me as I welcome Kenny Noah. If you don't mind, guys, there's an icon that has the clapping hands emoji on Zoom. So you can just, kindly just put our hands together for Kenny virtually. All right. Thank you so much, Kenny. We're happy to have you here today. Yeah, thank you so much, for your time. All right. So without wasting much of our time, Kenny, so let's start with this. In our world today, right, the dev team, which is the development team, and IT operations. Now, the development team are the developers, and IT operations team are, are the sysadmin team, infrastructure team, server team. Those are the teams that actually fall under the IT operations. Now, in our world today, these two teams are never friends, and you agree with me that they are never friends, or something I would call adversaries. Like they are never in agreements when it comes to deployments. And then on the other end too, we have the testing and security activities, happening at the end of the project. And what this means is that if the project fails testing or didn't pass security, then such projects would have to be returned for the dev team to remediate. And this, lead to what I call a high lead time in delivering the product. Now, what this means is that we fall short of so many things, including we fall short of our goals. Management is not happy. IT performance is pretty low. Salaries are being deducted. Bonuses are not paid. And eventually, there is reduction in budget. But all of this can be, like, the solution to all of this is practically DevOps. So again, what exactly is DevOps? Let us start from there.
I think you practically almost said it anyway, in a way, yeah, just like you said, DevOps, we hear it every time, it's becoming more or less like a buzzword. Sometimes some organizations say we are practicing it, in quotes, you know, in a way, you know, but simply put, it's basically a mixture of cultural principles, practices, as well as technologies. And I'd like to go a bit backwards to why, you know, you would agree with me that the stakes are becoming higher for organizations. You know, users are beginning to the request for more. You know, there's rising demands in the use case for users. You know, they want the experience in technology is different. You know, it has to be mobile, you know, it has to be fast in terms of speed to market, you know, so businesses are beginning to see the restriction of the traditional way we work. You know, you mentioned all the silos, you know, from a storage guy to a server guy, you know, to the development team, to the network security. There's been a lot of silos, and those silos actually restrict us from actually going to the market as fast as our users, you know, require. You know, so basically our culture has to change, you know, so it's more or less like a cultural change to be able to increase software delivery time, speed to the market, you know. And when we talk about the culture itself, we've talked about those silos coming together, you know, in terms of your ops team and your dev team actually being able to come together as a team, you know, to be able to share information, to be able to work together in harmony, you know, to be able to break those kind of issues we had in the past and increase our velocity to the market in terms of software delivery. So that's basically DevOps in a quote. You know, technology point of view, we are talking about also, you know, it comes along with some new form of technologies. You know, from an OS point of view, Linux is basic. You know, you have containerization, Docker, Kubernetes, Ansible, infrastructure as code from Terraform, you know, so it also comes with its own form of technologies as well. You know, so that's a nutshell when we talk about DevOps. It's about cultural changes, you know, cultural principles coming in and practices changing. When we talk about practices, we're talking about even how we project manage, you know, software delivery, you know, changing from traditional ways, you know, to new practices. When we talk about Scrum, you know, how we talk about things, how we actually being able to manage our project, which probably I'll talk about in much more details later, if possible. So that's a nutshell what DevOps is.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Kenny. So, in the words of Jeffrey Snover. Jeffrey Snover is a technical fellow at Microsoft, right? He said in the previous economic eras, right, businesses created value by moving atoms, but now they create value by moving bits. And you would agree with me today that organizations adopting DevOps principles and practices often deploy changes, you know, hundreds or, if I may say, even thousands of times a day.
Yeah.
And in an age where competitive advantage requires fast time to market and relentless experimentation, right? Organizations that are unable to replicate these outcomes are destined to lose in the marketplace as we have it today. Like they are destined to lose to, you know, companies leveraging the agile methodology, you know, DevOps and cloud, just like you said. Now, so the question is, can you give us a little background of the traditional system of IT and how we have transitioned, or we are still transitioning to cloud itself? Let us kind of like have that background into where we are coming from and where we are going.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And thinking about that, I think I'd like to illustrate maybe a typical scenario of how we used to do things, you know. And interestingly, I'll probably use you in the story as well. You know, so let's typically say DAS, you know, DAS is a startup organization, you know, and you have you're going into the market, and typically have services that you want to run, you know, that will help you from a business point of view to deliver value. And let's start from how we'll probably go around it, and yeah, think through with me as well. I'll probably maybe I'll ask you to put in some things as well. So let's say first thing first, you're thinking of what data center you want to run in. You're not. This also applies to maybe typical enterprise organizations that already have their in-house data centers as well. But let's say for for this story, you're a startup, you don't have that, so you're thinking of shopping for data centers. You probably go around the market. There are various colo data centers. In your requirements, you're thinking of security, you're thinking of availability, you're thinking, is it a tier 3, a tier 4 data center? You're doing different kind of shopping around. You probably go to the first one, second one, third one, to see which one probably fits in. Finally, you decide, okay, we're going for this particular data center. It suits our requirements, either from an availability point of view, different requirements, you have, it probably will take you maybe about to also sign up and everything, probably take you about 3 months, if lucky 2 months, to do all that. You got a data center, you have ordered your servers, your storage devices, your network devices from whichever of the OEMs, and typically that probably will take you maybe about 8 weeks if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, maybe customs is held up in customs somewhere, delivery takes, a while, and let's say we are lucky to have a lot of, and he's a server guy, good thing enough, all the rack screws coming in place, all the rack kits, there's no missing component somewhere. So a lot of us is the guy, he racks everything up, as fast as possible. That's delivered. God help us. Maybe there's an SFPs that we missed out, and then based on the network, we're using fiber networks in the data center. Okay, the server probably comes with the Ethernet gigabit cards. Oh man, we have to take about 2 weeks to actually replace those cards. We order new cards. It always happens most of the time, things like that happens, and then we power up our servers. We want to start setting them up, realize, okay, we're going to samboot this. We're not seeing launch on the servers. Oh, what's going on? A lot of us like, oh, I know, oh, we have to probably rezone. Okay, we didn't do our zoning properly, from the brocade switches. So you see all those complexities. A lot of us skilled enough to do the zoning in a day. Our app guys are sitting down, waiting for all this to be ready, probably doing some codes on their laptops, and things like that. But they're waiting, business is waiting for you. Everything is waiting because, we've not been able to actually go to market as fast as possible. DAS has competition. Competition have probably gone maybe from day 1 or 1 week, because they're using other forms of technology, maybe like cloud, and so they've started up, as fast as possible. We are still struggling, to get this running in 3 months. We are paying for time, and then our competition are ahead of us. These are typically how this works in the past, and it's expensive to business as well, because you're not tying down capital. We're using CapEx, to type our cost methodology is basically CapEx. That means we're investing upfront. As a startup business, you're spending a lot in data centers, you're spending a lot in investing in servers, network storages, upfront costs. These are investment basically you have secured. Yeah, maybe not so enough, but you're spending it upfront. Your competition is already going lean to the market. Right now we know most of the, from a business point of view, business wants to start lean, and so they've started lean and already upfront to the market. These are traditional ways that we used to do things, and then it cost us a lot in time, it cost us a lot in money, and then it reduces our competitive advantage as well. So this is a bit of illustration of how we used to do things. It could be much more complex than this. I'm sure you know that. It could be much more complex than this. From a development point of view,
absolutely.
From a development point of view, the developer is already trying to do something on his laptop. And then by the time everything is ready, he realizes that, oh, dependencies he used in terms of coding are not available on the systems and things like that. And then that causes another form of delays, So these are traditional ways that, the traditional method actually brings in complexities in the way we actually do things in the past. I hope that addresses your question, Oladapo.
Yes, it does. It does. And then talking about complexity, right? You would agree with me that the demand for cloud engineers has actually risen way over what it used to be. And this is because, just like you've said, right, businesses have realized that there's a need to migrate to the cloud. And not just to migrate to the cloud alone, also build cloud native services that would follow the SaaS principle. Well, it's not the SaaS that we know though, but the SaaS principle, talking about stability, availability, reliability, and security. Now, this is what most companies are actually, trying to build. So tell us, you work within the cloud space and you are usually very close to the clients, right? As an organization with, let's say, for example, now there's an organization that has 100% or, 100% of their workload on-premise, right? Why do I need to migrate to the cloud? Services are working well, you talked about the servers, my storage is in place. Why do I need to migrate to the cloud? Why can't I just collocate with other data centers? Why do I need to move to the public cloud? And the reason why I actually ask this question is because this is the questions that I get regularly. That what do you need to convince me, or how do you want to convince me to actually move my workloads to the cloud? Ken?
Very good question. And it's, especially for traditional people, I would say it takes a lot for us to actually see, and agree to some things that I'll also be saying, For instance, let's talk about faster time to market. We've talked about it, that our users are demanding more, from us. They're demanding in terms of their experiences, what they actually want, it's becoming very much. We've talked about releases, for some organizations probably have hundreds of updates in a day, hundreds of updates, thousands of updates coming out in a day. Our traditional way, really cannot cope with this. It's not actually designed for it in any way. So when we talk about faster time to market, it's very key. The cloud actually gives you that advantage to be able to get to market as fast as possible, to be able to actually update releases as fast as possible because of the way it works. We've talked about DevOps being a principle, being a practice and being a culture. This actually, it's a game changer, and cloud is an enabler of this. We also talk about scalability. How fast can you scale? How flexible is your business? These are advantages, the cloud brings in to being. You're talking about an application, and on Black Friday, you crash, because you cannot scale as fast as possible. Or maybe there's an impromptu spike, in user demand based on what a feature you have just released. And then your infrastructure is not scalable enough to actually, give you that experience, give your customer that experience. And so customers begin to actually complain that, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that, because your platform cannot scale as fast as you think, and that's what the traditional environment will always give you. It's not as scalable as you want. Even with the best capacity planning you can do, it cannot be as scalable, or as flexible as a cloud. Also for businesses, and this is where, when you start looking at IT as a business, which IT should actually be, cost becomes something very key. It's a disservice for your business to look at IT as a cost center, because it's a business driver, so cost saving is a very key part of this as well. For traditional organizations that feel we have a data center, we have this data center will still be there. Let's be honest with ourselves. It will still be there. However, taking advantage of the cloud, especially for some workloads, could give you very good cost advantage. For instance, why should I have a data warehouse, and spend so much, on my data warehouse, where I can actually leverage that advantage on the cloud immediately using I'm paying as I use. Why should I type millions of dollars upfront to actually build an infrastructure like that when I can actually just leverage on the cloud, and pay as I use, so it gives you a lot of cost savings from the cloud as well. Then when we start talking about collaboration as well, collaboration in terms of from a team point of view, things are changing. We talked about DevOps practices, to be able to harness that collaborative part of DevOps, it's important also that the cloud gives you that platform as, very easily. Security is another one. Security is it's one that people kind of are like a bit cautious about it when we talk about security, when we talk about, because one of the flags people raise a lot is the cloud secure? Probably this discussion is not about security, but when we talk about security, it's a shared responsibility between the provider, and the organization using the cloud. So the provider already has inbuilt, inherent security that has been provided by default. You can leverage this, and then build on top of this from your own perspective, depending on how you're using the cloud. So these are a lot of reasons, we have seen organizations and advantages or benefits, organizations that have moved to the cloud have been able to easily derive. For going back to your question, the bone of your question, for organizations that already have their platform, their data centers on-premise, they could also take advantage of it. We're talking about multi-cloud, hybrid cloud now. When you take advantage of it based on workloads, there's some workload that it's a waste of time, it's a waste of effort, it's more expensive to even run on-premise. Why not leverage on the cloud, immediately, and then begin to take advantage of it? There are various ways or entry ways we actually also go to the cloud. Maybe we discuss about that later, but there are also various ways we also take advantage in terms of entry into the cloud.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually made me to remember one of the organizations, that have been preaching cloud. Let us move these services to the cloud and all. The day we started having issues with that service, that particular service, that was the following week was when we now migrated that same workload to the cloud. So, most organizations wouldn't really see the need, now. And I will tell you that it was after migrating to the cloud that, we had, stability compared to where we're coming from, where, that same application must not cough.
Yeah.
The sysadmin, that. So
sometimes, in fact, not sometimes, it's difficult to build the kind of reliability and availability requirement that your application requires, on premise. Not that it cannot be done, but it's very difficult in terms of from a cost point of view, also from a management point of view. There are services that you can run on the cloud that are managed services, that already takes away the weight from an operation point of view off you. So those are values and advantages that the cloud already gives you at a go. So instead of you struggling with those things, you put it on the cloud, it helps you, takes away those manual tasks you do, operational labor, intensive operational stress, from your team. And then you're not actually seeing the value because most times service is down, this is that, and that is this, the cloud gives you that advantage at the go.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree with you. And then one of the reasons why, that some of these businesses will give to you is that maybe based on some certain level of regulations, they will say that data must not, reside on the cloud, or even if it's want to reside in the cloud, then it must have to be within our region. But unfortunately, we don't have, Nigeria does not have, any region whatsoever. And that is the excuse that they will keep giving. Okay, so so let's talk about DevOps a bit. Now, when you hear DevOps, right, the next thing you hear is cloud. Definitely, like those two things actually go hand in hand. Now, do they need to migrate to the cloud, before they can follow the DevOps methodology?
Well, yes and no. So first, the cloud is an enabler of DevOps practice. It helps you to be able, because from a cloud perspective, in the first place, it's built on these principles. Going to the cloud also, involves this cultural change on its own. When we talk about from a cultural point of view, from a practice point of view, also going to the cloud also involves this. And from a technology point of view, it also involves this. So the cloud itself is an enabler of your DevOps practice, and so that's why you find out that organizations that move to the cloud, fully move to the cloud, always find themselves adopting the DevOps practice in the first place. For organizations that have not moved to the cloud can also build the DevOps practice, so whichever one they are, whether on-premise, you can build your DevOps practice, but the cloud easily, because it actually, I'll say, inbuilt in it, culture definitely will change for you to really fully adopt the cloud. Your practices, your technology definitely will also change for you to fully adopt the cloud. So I want to believe that when we talk about building DevOps practice on-premise, yes, it will work. It works. You just have to make sure you bring in also the technologies involved. You're thinking from a cultural point of view. This involves strong leadership. I've seen a lot of organizations that say we want to practice DevOps, however, we're not willing to change, our culture. Definitely we find out that it still doesn't work as good as it should be. Some organizations just feel that we just change roles or titles, and then we begin to call ourselves this and that. And then we think that we have adopted the DevOps practices. It takes beyond that. It takes beyond just changing titles. A friend of mine, we were discussing recently. I was like, okay, one of the banks, we begin to change, this and that. And I was like, okay, what else is changing in the organization? As in, how do you do these processes? How is anything changing from a process point of view? Even from a people point of view, is anything changing? No, we just want to change the roles we have. We no longer want to be called this, we are called that. I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. So it takes a lot of strong leadership to be able to look at it from A to Z, the whole spectrum, and be able to imbibe that culture as well as the technologies involved in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And that is why I believe that most organizations that we have today, especially in this region in Nigeria, they've not really gotten the full grasp of what DevOps is. And that is why you would find different, JDs, job descriptions online. They're actually looking for a DevOps practitioner, right? And you just see all sort of, description that doesn't even follow what DevOps is all about. You'll be seeing things like maybe patching servers, just all sorts, so to say. So
the job, the JD itself doesn't match the role, and
yes,
doesn't fit even the the vision they have, and you're finding that there's a lot of missing link. I was talking to a former colleague, and we're just thinking backwards on how if you look at my role before, or where I was before, where we're selling technology, and we're talking about containerization, Kubernetes, to some of the customers we have engaged with in the past, how difficult it was, which is also still prevalent right now, how difficult it is to bring in those technologies. And part of the things what we also said was that it is difficult because technology cannot come before the culture changes. you can invest in the technology, and then the culture, the practices, the processes do not change. You find out that the technology would be probably shelfware at the end of the day. It would not, the full potential of the technology itself, will not change. We're talking about microservices. I remember from an organization, probably which you also know, we're talking about microservices, At the end of the day, we realized that what we're talking about microservices, they were thinking about something else. It didn't match up, and since the culture had not changed, the thinking has not changed, they couldn't embrace it. It just sounds fanciful, it sounds good, it sounds that, oh, this would do this, but from a leadership point of view, culture is not matching up, it's not changing, then they can't embrace it in any way. It just looks good, and it will always look good, So things like that are what we've seen, in our part of the world and in this part of the world, there's a big gap and a big difference. There's a big difference, and also because they are faster in terms of the cultural change has already happened. It's already happened. So when we talk about roles, when we talk about descriptions, job descriptions, when we talk about what they actually want from an output point of view, all those things have already been defined. If it's not done, you can't get there. So
yes,
that's it.
Absolutely, and that's the reason why I usually within within the boot camp itself, I usually tell our mentees that, see, just forget about tools for now, right? DevOps is not like a role where you are the only person in that particular role doing all sorts. You have to collaborate. You have to collaborate with several teams. And before you can be able to collaborate, you need to have a level of understanding of what it is that those, units actually contribute itself. So I tell people that you cannot find, in fact, I don't even like using the words DevOps engineer. I tell people that for you to be able to see someone that follow the DevOps culture, right, it must be an engineer first before it must be an engineer with a DevOps mindset.
It is
or let's say a cloud engineer with a DevOps mindset. Exactly. So, and that was why we took time, I know that the 2 sprints that we started with, within daas.ng, we started with project management and then went into agile methodology, because we're trying to build that culture so that, just like you said, you won't just know Terraform, you won't know how to use Ansible, you know how to use Jenkins without having that mindset. What is that thing that I really want to do? What is that bottleneck within the organization? You can't just start installing Jenkins and say, okay, I'm ready to start, deploying pipelines and all of. You need to understand the mindset. That is what DevOps is all about, because you have seen a bottleneck, right? There's a friction somewhere that you really need to resolve. And to me, that is what DevOps is all about. And most mentees will come to me to tell me that, okay, want to learn. I don't know all the tools myself. Like you can't even exhaust all of the tools. It's not possible.
It's impossible.
Right? It's just for you to have that understanding of what is that particular thing that I want to change within the workplace. Then after that, just like you said, right, the culture and the understanding should come in first before the tools needed itself. So thank you so much, Kenny, for that. Now, another question is, in terms of migration, what are those things that traditional institutions need to look out for before migrating to the cloud? Because definitely you have clients, you have customers that you meet them to preach Google Cloud, right? And then you find out that really once you are done with your assessment, you find out that there are some certain services that really cannot move to the cloud. So in terms of migration, because I'm sure that organizations, project managers are on this call and they will still watch this video. So in terms of migration, what are those things that businesses, traditional institutions, and that was why I put traditional institutions, what are those things that they need to look out for when, planning to migrate to the cloud?
Yeah, I would answer this in hindsight of being in your shoes, especially in the context of Nigeria now, or Africa. I would use Africa as a whole, whereby you're preaching cloud, to these traditional organizations. Some of the, when we talk about, it's a journey first, a cloud, migration is a journey. It's difficult to start talking about how before we answer the question of what. The question of what first has to be answered first. What do you want from the cloud journey itself? And this is one of the missing link I see a lot of organizations, do, in terms of, we're just talking about, how do we go? What do you want the journey to achieve? What are you going to achieve as an organization on this journey? You have to first be able to answer that question, the question of what. When you answer the question of what, then it's easier for us to now start talking about how. How do you want to get there? And when I talk about the journey, I look at it in three different phases. First is the tactical part. You could be tactical, you could be strategic, and then lastly, it could be transformational. Let me start with strategic. Strategic tends to be more or less like we are just moving something. Let's just move something. It tends to be maybe to reduce costs or to minimize maybe an IT service disruption. Like you mentioned earlier, about a service that you guys migrated to the cloud because, it was difficult for you to manage in terms of uptime and things like that. And just like, oh, let's just put it here. So that is more of a tactical level, from a journey point of view. We've just put in some service there. When we move a bit higher, it becomes to the strategic phase. In that perspective, we want to increase IT value. This tend to be about changing some of the ways, some of the way we do some things, but not completely in terms of restructuring or redesigning everything, because let's face it, for us to get to a transformational level whereby we have elevated IT as a whole, to be more or less like a center of innovation, it involves much more. It involves a lot of redesigning of existing architectures. It involves a lot of, when we talk about redesigning, obviously follows through maybe refactoring, rehosting. So it involves a lot of transformation of what we do currently. We've talked about even our development, from a cloud native perspective, how do you design monolithic applications before, for you to get to a transformation level? Obviously that architecture has to change. The services you run probably will also change. So it's a whole redesign of your architecture. And that's why you find out that for organizations to get to that level, it takes a while. So migration mostly started from being tactical. That's where it starts off from. It's, let's just move this service in the way it is. Let's run it the way it is. Maybe just because we just want to have the benefits of it being on the cloud, so that we don't have to, we don't have to, it doesn't have to go down, the uptime of the cloud, so things like that happens, also migrating to the cloud. Also, I always say we follow a methodology, and it's very important, because that guides us. From our perspective, there are four major pillars when we talk about the methodology framework. We're looking at what we call the learn, the lead, the scale, as well as the secure. And when we talk about the learn, this is very key, because cloud brings a lot of new skills, so it's important to be able to approach learning in a different way compared to how we used to approach it, in a traditional way. In a traditional way, we are used to, when we talked about the silos way, individually have one function, one application you're managing, one thing. It's more or less like a one, I'm just in my domain. From a cloud point of view, it exposes you to quite a lot of things, at a fast pace. It's no longer about me having a learning calendar whereby, oh, I go for an annual training, and things like that. Things change fast, so it's more or less like continuous learning, and experimenting it immediately, experimenting continuously, so learning actually changes on the cloud. And it's very important because when we talk about the mindset changing, these are things that have to change. We talk about also the lead is about leadership. It involves real strong leadership from strategic people in the organization. So when we talk about that migration to the cloud, this has to follow. If we don't have that strong sponsorship, there's no way your migration to the cloud can be successful. So there has to be stakeholders involved, understanding what it takes, what is required, and what the outputs will be. So because these are things that I have seen personally, especially working in Nigeria and preaching the cloud to organizations, is that yes, some of our CIOs, some of our leadership can talk about it, but they don't have that strong backing, even from the organization itself, that we will face this through, and this is what we will get at the end of the day, so that's very key. We also talk about scale, so everything basically is deployed faster on the cloud. You have room to scale better. So when we talk about designing our applications, designing, our architecture as well, it is designed in that way also to scale. We're talking about automating things, repeated tasks, things like that. Okay, I think I'm seeing some questions coming in. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take questions. Yeah.
Okay.
When it's time.
All right. And then lastly, as well, from a framework point of view, we talk about the secured practices as well. When we are designing as well, we have to factor that in, as in designing for a migration point of view, we're talking about secure point of view as well. We have to put in that as well as a factor, in our migration process.
Okay, all right. So please, if you have questions, kindly note them down and we'll take the questions very, very soon. So we'll be rounding off soon. Now, okay, so to the concluding part of this chat, I want to ask, is cloud expensive? Is it really expensive as compared to, on-premise environments that we have?
That is a very interesting question. To be honest, I'm not sure how to answer that really. So it basically depends, like I said, for instance, you are migrating to the cloud, how are you migrating to the cloud? What services are you migrating to the cloud? Are you changing the way, it is designed? It designed from an on-premise, probably must also change. We have to refactor, we have to, so things like that come into place when we talk about costs, because running on the cloud, involves you to be much more strategic. Strategic, what I mean by that now is, what am I migrating and how am I migrating this? Is this service, when I migrate this service the way it is to the cloud, one, what advantage does it give me? Two, if I break it down or redesign it, how, can it definitely will be better, and definitely we can reduce cost. So for organizations that just lift and shift is the first way to go, yes, from a technical point of view. But by the time you're getting to a strategic point of view, those things around cost savings and things like that begin to play in. So definitely cloud gives you a better cost advantage. First in terms of the cost model definitely changes. So it gives you room to be able to use money for different things while you're just paying for what you're using, and then by the time you start taking advantage of cost optimization that the cloud provides for you for your services, then it becomes much more expensive, much more less expensive for you as an organization. So that question basically is about, it depends. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on the services you're running, and it depends on how you're running that particular service on the cloud. So there's a lot of factors that can make cloud much more beneficial from a cost point of view for you, your organization, and the services that you run.
Okay, all right. So in terms of projection, business propositions and what have you, what is the projection in terms of adoption of DevOps in Nigeria? Because really, part of our goal within DAS is demystifying DevOps practices in Nigeria, just to preach that DevOps is not difficult, but it just needs to follow some certain level of practices, to be able to move products to the market within a faster rate, of course. So in terms of projection, right, and in terms of adoption of DevOps in Nigeria, are organizations in Nigeria ready for DevOps?
Well, there's one thing about readiness. Even if we are not ready, the market makes us to be ready. And we're getting to that part whereby the market is forcing us to be ready now in Nigeria. 7 years ago, we could still, we're still playing around it, but right now the market is forcing us. And why? Because we're beginning to have competition. A lot of startup organizations are beginning to spring up, and they are much more faster, they're running leaner, and their services are much more better, and this is what's basically causing us to be able to, making organizations to be able to rethink about how they run IT today. How do you run in a lean way? How do you ensure that your services are coming out faster, are much more reliable, and so there's a lot of factors. These factors are basically things that are driving us to adopt this methodology, DevOps cloud, and beginning to rethink it. Like you said, when you're introducing me, I've been, quite a while. I remember, maybe about 10, 12 years ago, talking about cloud to somebody in the banks, a very senior person, and it was like, didn't see how that will work out, and things that this is beginning to change. The dynamics are changing. These are things that begin to consider. We already have a lot of even those kind of institutions already even running one or two of their platforms, on the cloud already. So this is beginning to change, and I see that we will only continue to adopt this. From a futuristic point of view, I think things will change very, very soon around that. Organizations are beginning to rethink this. We talked about organizations even starting from the roles. Yes, we might find out that yes, we are starting poorly, but the good thing about it is that we are starting. Yes, it could be about, we're just changing roles, we are doing this, we're doing that. It might not be as planned, or as meticulous as it should be, but we are starting or beginning to see that there's a need to change something, and I think that's a positive sign for me, that we're even seeing that we're beginning to see that we need to change something, so with time, I believe that, other things will begin to play out in terms of processes will begin to change, the culture will begin to adopt it properly, and then technology obviously will come in. A lot of people are already playing around with technology already. You'd agree with me. A lot of people are already playing out. In fact, that's the first thing a lot of people do, play around with technology. But we just need the culture, we need the practices to processes to change, and then to match up with it.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. With you 100% on that. So lastly, on these notes, so that at least we can take questions and let's finish up on time. Lastly, you work in a very structured and organized environment, that founded things like Kubernetes, sites, reliability engineering, mindset, and a whole lot of other cool stuffs. Now, what will you advise in terms of number one, the skills needed and the tools, needed to thrive within DevOps and cloud space. So in terms of tools and skills, right, what are those must get skills and tools, needed, to be able to thrive well within the DevOps and the cloud space?
Yeah, so from a skills point of view, certain things definitely, I would say Linux is the default, obviously, from an OS point of view, Linux is the default. Things like Docker, being able to use Docker, Terraform, having some knowledge about scripting, programming, so these are skills definitely are basic skills that you need to have, and once you have those kind of basic skills, then you can begin to build on it, Tools, when we talk about tools, we can't exhaust tools, so because there are various tools. I would say that pick the one you're comfortable with, the ones you want to be an expert in, and then be an expert in it. There's no point in terms of being a jack of all, pick the ones that you want to really specialize in, you want to be a master in, and then use them. From a cloud point of view as well, obviously, we're in a multi-cloud world, and have the understanding, I would say, of all clouds. Especially as you start up, have an understanding of of all the major clouds anyway, which I believe you already know. I won't mention. So that also helps you. Have understanding about their, some of the tools from a DevOps point of view, that they use. Have that understanding on how it works here, and then create a roadmap for yourself that this is the area I want to specialize in. What I have seen in this part of the world is specialization is very key. In our part of the world, in Nigeria and Africa, we're used to actually just knowing everything, and not having that kind of core areas, So it's important that we understand to have at least create a roadmap for ourselves and have some core areas, areas of specialty, some tools that you are masters in, and then focus on that. But I've talked about the baselines, Linux is key, have some good understanding about programming, obviously Kubernetes and containerizations, Terraform, those are basic things that basically you should have knowledge about.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Kenny. Thank you so much. Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. My internet just, because I'm actually using two internet sources, so I just had to kind of like log into the second device. Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Kenny. This has been engaging and exciting. I didn't even know that time had gone. All right, so thank you so much, Ken. So we'll just take questions now. So please, if you have questions, kindly signify so that we would quickly take the questions and wrap up for the day. So please, if you have questions, kindly signify and we'll be good to go.
There was a question on the chat. Akinfemi, would you like to?
Okay.
Yes.
Let me see. Oh, okay.
Maybe Akinfemi, would you like to, instead of us reading it, would you like to say?
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Akinfemi.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Oh, okay, your internet is a bit poor.
If I will clear the hair on that, I think probably he didn't get what Dapo was saying. If to him he felt Dapo was mentioning you must have an engineering degree before you can dive into DevOps. That is not what Dapo really meant. He's saying you must have that engineering mindset, not having an engineering degree. You can study anything. In fact, for me, the age that we're in now, digital revolution age, it's not about what you study. It's about your mindset. You have the mindset to learn. You unlearn, relearn, and that is also, it's not I've studied this degree or I've studied that degree. So I think he didn't get it clearly when Dapo was saying there's nothing like DevOps engineer, you need to follow me an engineer. He's not saying get an engineering degree. I mean, the way you work and the way you think like an engineer, not like an engineering degree.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
It's not about, in fact, I'll tell you, sometimes, especially in this part, you hardly even see your colleagues, having the kind of degree you have as an engineer. I studied computer engineering. Nowadays, you actually hardly find real people that studied engineering in the field. It's your background, especially in IT today, really, it's irrelevant. You can actually move into anything. And just like you said, you studied geography, and here you are as a DevOps engineer. So you're absolutely correct. What Dapo was referring to was basically just a mindset, not the degrees you have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Femi. So do we have any other question?
Yeah, there's another question that just came into the chat room.
Okay.
It says, based on the last question around skill set needed, what extra do we need to do to get into top organizations like Google? I would say it's basically what you're already doing. However, maybe it will also be good to just, like I mentioned, specialization also matters a lot. Finding one area that you are, passionate about, and then, putting all your being a specialist in it, helps a lot. In the part of the world in Africa, we're used to doing several things, which helps a lot, really. It gives us that being able to be, dynamic and being able to know quite a lot, but also having an area of focus, really happens. It really is important, for us as well. And then trying yourself out, really, just trying yourself out. You have, a lot of us have those skills, just market yourself out there, and then you can be there. I think Chukwemeka,
Yes, Chukwemeka has a question. Okay, Chukwemeka, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Dapo. Thank you, Mr. Noah. So I really appreciate the section. I'm about to bring out my question from the statement that DevOps is actually a mindset, not really about the tools and maybe the framework we use to implement our solutions. So I really agree on that. So, but I want to just ask a question regarding this. Now, when you say DevOps, it's development and operation being brought together. So which means as a DevOps engineer, you need to understand the development aspect of it and also the operation aspect of it. So I want to ask, from your experiences, what are the tools in terms of the development? Because a development project, a project can come from, it can be an application on the web, it can be an application or maybe on a phone, like a mobile application. So I maybe on a DevOps in a particular place, when project comes in, what are the tools that I need to, like these are things I need to know to help me scale through, irrespective of where this project is coming in. From the development point of view, the whole application is now working and operational. Thanks.
So remember when we said about, developers as well as the ops guys, coming into the team, being able to understand what each other is doing, in that as well, we still also have roles. We still have developers that code, and so they code in the language that they choose to code. However, they know, okay, yes, this language we're using to code is what everybody is agreeing. Basically, we have a common understanding on the language we're using to code. From things like the person writing the scripts for infrastructure is also there writing the scripts for infrastructure to be able to be repeatable, reusable scripts. From a CI/CD point of view, you also have, tools you can use for CI/CD, either cloud builds, Azure DevOps, Jenkins, things, quite a lot of Jenkins, quite old now, but, quite a lot of tools. So there are a lot of tools that are involved in the whole process. We're talking about artifact registry, from a registry point of view. We're talking about Kubernetes, from a platform point of view in terms of, so these are things that are core, I'll say, service and tools, that we as a team collectively now, we're looking at it as a team, all have understanding about, all have our unique functions. For instance, I probably am the one in charge of the platform itself to make sure that, okay, when this code runs within my pipeline, it runs on XYZ nodes, on the Kubernetes platform, or things like that. So we still also have layers of functions within the whole process as a whole. However, we all have common understanding, so it's not like it used to be before, that the server guy is just somewhere, creating a server because they told him to just create something that, the developer is going to run on, so there's a whole lot of difference in those worlds. I hope I got your question correctly and I'm able to answer you. If not, you can please reframe the question and then I probably can provide a better answer. Yeah, Chukwemeka, does that answer you?
Okay, yeah, that was all the question.
Okay,
Thanks.
right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So again, in addition to what Kenny actually talked about, right? Just like you said, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So in addition to that as well, it's not because I'm a DevOps practitioner and I work with different development teams and all. So it is not compulsory for you to learn coding. It is not compulsory for you to learn development per se, though it will still help you, learning things around Python and Go. But that doesn't mean that if you don't know those tools, that doesn't mean that you are not really a DevOps practitioner, so to say. But what I would advise is, we've talked about microservices. It is very, very important, just like Kenny said, it is very, very important to know the kind of architecture that you are running within your organization. Are you running a monolithic application, or you are running microservices? Now, if you are running microservices, how do you want to scale those microservices, either vertically or horizontally? How do these services build? Peradventure, there's a service that was built, let's say in your organization use .NET, for example. You need to be able to, I tell people most of the time that you need to learn the manual way of doing things before you can automate it. And the CI/CD tools that we have today are just automating platforms, right? The same thing that a developer is all of those steps that it takes to build a particular artifact. Now, an artifact is just a package that needs to be deployed. Now, the same steps it takes to build all of those artifacts, talk about your restore packages, talk about your build, talk about downloaded packages and all of that. Those are part of the manual things he would build on his own system, on his own dev environment, to be able to test that artifact. You need to learn all of those procedures, right? After learning all of those procedures, I'm not saying that you need to learn .NET, right? But you need to learn the build process. Very important. Once you know the build process, right, that will now help you when it now comes to, translating this to make it automated, and that is why I usually tell people will say, I want to start learning Jenkins.
Hey, Dapo, your audio is gone. Yeah, so I think the point Dapo is making, for me as a developer, as a DevOps person, you that's how you said, you don't need to be a programmer per se, but it's an advantage, and even if you are not, you would find out that with time you begin to also understand, because it's important to be able to also interpret, the codes you're saying, so you begin to also understand that, with time, so.
Hello, sorry, I got,
you got
network
out.
is really okay. It's fine. So I was just trying to round up is, it's good that we know all of these processes so that once you start using tools such as Jenkins, TeamCity, CircleCI, all of these tools are, cool tools that still accomplish the same tasks, to get your package up and running to your target environment. So you must not learn, what is it called? You must not learn .NET, you must not learn Java, you must not learn all of those, programming language, but it's very important that you know how to build all of these processes so that when it comes to deployment, you'll be able to follow the different microservice mindset when it comes to deployment. So I just wish to add that to Kenny's explanation as well.
Chukwemeka has asked a much more interesting question. Now, who is a better DevOps person? The one who understands DevOps methodology, with a project mindset, a project management background, or the software guy that writes code, understands it and have been deploying solutions for long. So it's like saying,
yeah.
Well, the word better, really, I don't think we should use the word better. I would say, yes, the guy that has a coding background, could have an easier advantage, but that doesn't take away that the guy that's coming with a project management background cannot overtake. You get, so for instance, because he already has understanding about coding, he's a programmer, he develops before, and things, it already puts him ahead. Fine, but that doesn't really mean, because within the DevOps practice as well, like I said, we also have our areas of expertise. You also have to know that we have your areas of expertise within DevOps as well. So I wouldn't use the word better. And what Dapo was saying, if we go back to what Dapo was saying as well, you don't need to be a programmer. Don't let us get it wrong that, all DevOps people are programmers. Don't let us get that wrong. You don't really need to be a programmer.
And also to add to that, we have some developers that don't know anything about DevOps. Theirs is just to write the code. Exactly. So just like Kenny said, right, there's no actual leverage on saying that you're a software guy or you have the DevOps methodology, you better it's just for you to understand the mindset and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are like, see, coding gives you an advantage, not even just on the DevOps world. Let's be honest ourselves, especially in technology. Coding gives you an advantage because it's even from a mindset point of view, as a programmer, you already have an advantage because you really know quite a lot. But let's not say that. See, as a DevOps person, even with time, you're not a programmer, you don't have a programming background, but the more you involve yourself in DevOps, with the team, you begin to understand codes that your developers are writing. You might not be able to say, okay, yes, you're a development guy, but we begin to have that understanding of and read their codes and be able to see what they're writing, with time. So let's not get it wrong that, oh, I have to, be a master in programming and things like that. No, that's not entirely correct. You have understanding, you get those understanding as you proceed in your journey.
All right, thanks so much. That's noted.
Yeah, it's still, I think the questions are more or less like, yeah. And when you look at the job roles, yes, you could say, because sometimes with the way the job roles comes, when you look at it, they tell you level of programming knowledge is required in XYZ language. Yes, we do see that, so that's if you're coming for that angle, yes, you could say to an extent, they have that advantage to be able to get the jobs faster because they have those knowledge, but there are also some, look at the job roles particularly, there's some job roles that really emphasizes on some particular tools, that you already have the knowledge about, and then you could get that. Like I said, there's a lot of job roles actually within DevOps itself. There are a lot of job roles.
Okay, hello.
All right.
I have a
Kenny,
question.
thank you so much.
Hello, Dapo, can I ask a question, please? Hello.
Yes, Jude, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Still on this very question. Hello, Kenny. Thank you so much for the clerks and Dapo and the team. Thank you so much. I want to ask, what then, since it's not more of having a software how would I put it, a skill or experience that really takes it all. So what, okay, let's say after this class now, after this bootcamp, after this training, I have the knowledge, I have the tools, I know the tools, and as well the knowledge or the DevOps culture very well. How do I sell myself now? How do I sell myself? What kind of project do I do? Okay, for instance, there is a job role, there's a job role Shehu just posted, and one of the requirements is I should put your GitHub repository. And from my own side, I have learned the tools. I'm very good. I know each and every one of the tools. I've used them, right? So what will make it marketable to my potential employers? What should I show them? Or what should I use to show them see that I'm a DevOps guy, I have done this and I've done that, I know these tools, just give me the job and I can do that. To break down my question, I mean, what should I do to make myself marketable, to prove to my employers or my potential employers that I know these things very well?
Good question. So in terms of, I will use the word packaging yourself, for your potential employers.
Hello, Kenny, let me make it easy for you. Let's say that you're the HR, and you are interviewing me. What do you want from me for me to prove to you that I am a DevOps guy? Let's do that. Let's make it simple. So what do you look out so that this will help enable us to go and build ourselves, not only knowing the tools and all that, but now doing the extra now. So what will make me see you, or what will make you take me or believe in me that I can do this job? Yeah. I think that would be better, yeah.
Yeah, good. So it all depends on the role you're going for. For instance, now, let's say you see a role that actually majors on, let's say the platform side. For instance, let's say the containerization, Kubernetes part of things, already you know that you are fit for that role. Why? Because you have good knowledge around Kubernetes, good knowledge about containerization, and then maybe your knowledge base around programming, is not that much. However, you have knowledge about, from what it takes for you to write the code and then get to the platform in terms of delivery, in terms of your CI/CD process, you have those knowledge, So in packaging yourself well, you have packaged yourself well from at least from the resume you have and things like that around your knowledge around Kubernetes. Probably you have done, I don't want to say some projects, but you have probably, because as a startup person, you have probably run applications, on Kubernetes. You've been able to make sure it is highly available, and things like that, services, different microservices that you've been able to deploy on Kubernetes. Those are the things that you, from a strength point of view now, focus on your strength. That's one thing I used to say, you have to focus on your strength, because your strength probably is not around the development side, the coding side, but your focus, your strength might be around the platform side. So focus on it. Focus on how applications can run, microservice applications. You've been able to network them on Kubernetes. You've been able to make them highly available. Focus on that level. If you focus on that, and then maybe the CI/CD process, how, what you use and things like that, how you make sure Terraform side, of things, how you make sure infrastructure is repeatable, is as a code, you can focus on that level, and then streamline on the job roles. For some job roles, it's even about management. It could be around metrics, Prometheus, and things like that, using those kind of tools, to make sure that you create better SLOs, from a metrics point of view, that's why I said there's a lot of job roles within DevOps. You have to focus on the areas of your strengths. You might not have projects on GitHubs, and things like that. You might not have projects to really show from a development side, but you already have those skills, from an SRE point of view, what you can make, how you can make applications more reliable and things like that. You might already have that, and those are the things that you can show, and then when you come for the interview, those are the things that you speak on, you speak about. It will be less, that interview will be less about the programming part of things. What they will be probably finding out is, okay, yes, do you understand, do you understand, at least have some bit of understanding about codes? Those are the things that they will be finding out, compared to another part, which is focused on the code itself. So I would say always focus on your strengths. Jude, I'm not sure if, is that okay? Is this still some doubts about that?
Yeah, perfect.
Have you gone for any interviews like that, before, and what are
actually, I'm not going for an interview because they just, I must be frank with you, a certification is very scary, especially someone that is doing self-learning. Imagine someone saying you didn't have 4+ experience in DevOps, and you're like, and the last time I knew about DevOps was just 2 years ago, except it has been going on and I don't know. So why asking for 7 years experience? Like, I don't understand. So the discussions, and honestly, is really scary to me. So at times I feel like, let me just go back to my shop, I keep learning. I feel like I'm not even enough for the job, right? So that's just the whole thing. But so far, my take home now is I should work on my strength, and I think that's what I should do. And whether I get a job or not, no problem. I believe I'll get it someday.
Yeah. So while learning as well, especially around, while learning as well, take because you mentioned about what I think you can show. For instance, let's say you're doing, there are a lot of projects, self-learning projects that you can actually create. So you are, because what they want to see is that you also have understanding about your, the DevOps practice itself, so, you have understanding on, how to create this, how to create that, while you're learning. It's good as well that, for instance, you drop in an application on the platform, you take it through the whole pipeline, those are things that you can actually keep. That, okay, yes, you've been able to test this application from tests, to development, as you're doing this learning journey, make sure you keep distractions, because these are things that when you go for an interview, I know probably that will probably take you guys. We use the STAR approach, right? You're talking about a situation, what you did. It's not about, oh, I learned this, or you have, so no, it's about a situation, what you actually did. So as you're learning, I used to tell people, create a more or less like a simulation, create a situation, create a scenario. This is what we are trying to solve, and then you are learning with it. It's not just about reading something, so for instance, you want to deploy, a service on Kubernetes, this is a service, this is a journey, this is what I did to be able to run that service there. So you are creating a situation, this service is going to do this, it's supposed to be deployed in this way, it's supposed to, and these are records that you keep. So when you come for the interview, you're not just telling me that you know this, you're telling me in a form that this is what I did to be able to run this service.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny. Yeah, that's yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Kenny. Thank you so much. Well, please, you can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Dapo. I believe we can hear you.
Okay. All right. You've actually blown our minds away, really. So thank you so much, Kenny. Thank you for your time and the efforts and the time taken to be able to share your experience within the DevOps and the cloud space. Thank you so much. We are grateful. All right. So I will just give room for maybe like a minute or two. So I don't know if our co-founders, Sheung or Nuruddin, just to appreciate you more. Sheung, are you online?
Thanks. Enough of the appreciation, that was.
Hello, Sheung.
Online.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
Afternoon. So thanks so much, Noah. Now, I remember when, for a while, when we were talking about bringing up now for this session. So I remember I was asking who is Noah. I never knew he's someone that I know very much, but from a distance, but we didn't get to talk. He always come into our organization then when he was with VMware. So I know him. He's always with the sysadmin guys. So on this afternoon, when the picture came out, I said, I know him very well. Thanks so much. We appreciate you for, one thing over time, I remember